Traveling the Vortex.
Traveling the Vortex. I'm Sean. Here with me is Keith.
Hello.
And Glenn.
Hello.
And we're going to talk some Doctor Who today.
I think first thing I wanted to bring up was our opening music. People have noticed it now. We decided to use a 8-bit theme of the Doctor Who theme, and the reason we did that is because all of us are, or have been, or are currently gamers, and so we thought it would be kind of clever to open the show with one of the classic sounds that we remember from the late 80s and early 90s from Nintendo in those days, and I happened to find one online that I really fell in love with, and so that's a little bit of the history behind our show open.
And it had absolutely nothing to do with the dream that I had.
Oh, talk about your dream, because that was a lot of fun.
You weren't there for that. I had a dream. I kid you not. I sat down, I was telling Glenn about this dream where I had found and was playing a Doctor Who video game.
There are actually a couple for the computer.
This is the interesting bit. It was on my 360. It was like an Xbox Live game that I had downloaded and found it and was so excited about it. And it was the absolute worst crappy graphics you could possibly imagine. It looked like an old 8-bit, boxy stuff and still animation with text pages coming up, and I couldn't have been happier. I was thrilled to play this game.
Because it's Doctor Who,
because
and it's a video game.
And it was a video game. It was two things at once. And then Glenn said, "That's really interesting that you say that, because I found the opening theme music." So it was serendipity.
Yeah, apparently in England they released several computer games for Doctor Who with Tennant as the Doctor.
Actually, they are available to the U.S. now.
Are they now?
Yeah. I think it's name in the show notes, but the name escapes me now. But you can actually get them in the United States now. I think the first 3. I think there has since been a game released that is only available in the UK, and all of those games were only at one time available in the UK. But now I think they're like $4. Then
you can get them on like Steam, right?
It's not Steam; it's the other one. There's it has Drive, but it's a Stream-like service where you just pay. I think they're $5 or $4. Download it and you can play it on your computer. You got to have a pretty decent graphics card. I realized I actually had the first one. Had to downgrade my graphics in order for it to play smoother, but I've got kind of an older computer, so that is that.
Neat.
Well, moving along, let's talk a little bit about feedback. We've actually had some response to the show. We are very pleased with the response that we've gotten. I think when we first started this podcast, we didn't imagine we'd get the response that we've got. We haven't received a lot of feedback, but we've got a lot of people. We've got a lot of subscribers now. We actually have people that have posted now on our Facebook page. We've got a lot of followers now on Twitter. We've got a lot of followers on our Facebook page. And I did receive a email from the show. We received an email from in our Gmail account from David Fox Mullen. And this is what he says. He says, "I love original concepts for podcasts. Our Doctor Who show," this is where he plugs his, which is fine, is with myself and my 13-year-old daughter. She only knows the new series as I have watched the classic and the new. Might I interest you in checking out our show? We are on average about 20 minutes or less. And again, that's from David Mullen. And the show is called the New Who Podcast. So I'm going to give a shout out to Dave. And Dave, I did get a chance to take a listen to it today, and I really like the concept of the show. You guys reviewed The Christmas Carol today, and that was interesting. And it's real neat to hear the perspective of your stepdaughter, I believe it is. And she's got quite a radio voice, so she's she's right on top of things. And it was real neat to hear the perspective from the older generation and then the younger generation as well. And they talked a little bit about their Christmas gifts, what they got for Christmas this year, and it's a lot of fun. So I encourage anybody to check that out. It's again the New Who Podcast, and you can find that at www.newwhopodcast.com.
And of course, if anybody has any feedback they'd like to send us, you can shoot us an email at Traveling the Vortex at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Traveling the Vortex, or on Twitter, Travel Vortex on Twitter.
Well,
And we would love any feedback that you want to send. If you have any suggestions on topics or even a segment idea or formatting ideas, we'd love to hear them.
absolutely. And we've got a Google voicemail as well if you want to leave audio feedback. I don't have the number with me right here, but we'll put that in the show notes as well. If you want to leave us an audio feedback, please feel free, and we'll try to play it out on the show.
And we each have Twitter accounts now. I'm Vortex Keith.
I'm Vortex Sean.
And I'm Glenn_Bartlett, because I'm using my original Twitter account, which I still have. We actually just set Sean up tonight, brought him into the 21st century. So Sean is now officially on Twitter, and you can contact us anyway that way. There are links on our website, which is travelingthevortex.blogspot.com, and you can go there and find links to any of our Twitter feeds, our Facebook. You can find all that information there, as well as episodes from this show.
And anything else interesting we find, or random ramblings.
Yeah, absolutely.
About Doctor Who.
And there will be a lot of random ramblings. It's like,
Courtesy of Sean.
that's the one thing I can guarantee we will have no end of.
We're very good at rambling. Moving along, let's talk a little bit about news now. As we mentioned last week, we aren't going to presuppose that we're going to break any stories. So a lot of fans will have already heard these stories, know this information, but we brought a couple of items today that we just wanted to kind of provide our reaction to, and Keith's got the first one.
Well, a lot of Torchwood news has come out this week. They've changed the name to Miracle Day from New World, and here's what the press release kind of says. The BBC and Starz Entertainment today announced new cast, plot, and character details for the new series of Torchwood. First is the name change from Torchwood New World to Torchwood Miracle Day. It will premiere this July. The cast will be Mekhi Phifer, ER, and Lie to Me as Rex Matheson, a CIA operative. The famous Bill Pullman as Oswald Danes, a convicted child killer who survives his own execution to become the most infamous man on the planet. Alexa Havens as Esther Drummond, a desk-bound CIA agent. Arlene Tur as Dr. Vera Juarez, a Washington, D.C. surgeon. And, of course, John Barrowman and Eve Miles will return as their roles as Captain Jack Harkness and Gwen Cooper, respectively. The 10-episode installment has been written by a team led by Torchwood creator Russell T. Davies and produced by BBC Worldwide Productions. Let's talk about the cast real quick. There's also been announced that Daikon Lichen, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name, but Sierra from Dollhouse.
I'm sure she's listening.
And, well, as rabid as Whoinverse fans are, Whedonverse fans
That's
like myself
true.
are just as
True.
rabid. If you don't know who that is, that's Sierra from Dollhouse, and if you haven't watched Dollhouse, go watch it now. But she's going to guest star on it. What do you guys think of some of this casting?
Well, I think it's great. I think the most interesting, and some of these we already knew, but I think today BBC Universal or Worldwide actually made some of these official. So I think some of the ramblings out there have been, but we've known some of these for a while. But I think that one of the most interesting is Bill Pullman's character. I mean, this is a guy, he hasn't done a lot of films lately, but he's a big name actor.
Oh,
he's somebody
yeah.
that I think everybody recognizes, especially from such films as Independence Day.
Oh,
We will not go quietly into the night.
Even going back to Spaceballs.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Captain Lone Star.
Yeah.
So
And the last thing I've seen him in was The Grudge, and he did a good job in it, but it was such a small part that I wished he had a bigger part in it.
So I wonder if this is kind of the attempt to pull some star power to the series. I mean, a lot of these guys, they're well enough known for things that they've done in the past. Some of these guys are and gals are a lot more known in the UK, but I think this gives it a little more of an American flavor. I think since they've chosen to partner with Starz Entertainment and produce a show in the United States, I think that that's going to kind of bring the United States viewer, maybe the casual viewer that isn't so much familiar with Torchwood or has just started to get into the series, I think that's going to lend some pull. And he's a great actor. I really enjoy him.
And Mekhi Phifer is pretty good, too. I didn't see much of ER, and I haven't watched Lie to Me, but he was in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, and he did a good job in that. And he's one of those people that the name doesn't sound familiar, but as soon as you see him, you recognize him.
I think that's true, yeah.
And once the promos start rolling, people are like, oh, hey, it's that guy. I like him. I'll tune in.
I'm just excited that John Barrowman's coming back.
Absolutely.
I've been waiting for Captain Jack, and it's long overdue.
Which, from what I've heard from other podcasts, is when they announced that they were moving over to quote-unquote the U.S., or there was rumors that they were going to move to the U.S., and that they were going to partner with Starz, there was worry that Captain Jack might not return because it's kind of a way of them trying to start new. But it is good to see that they're keeping the original cast coming back.
The remaining.
Yeah,
cast,
well,
yeah.
Spoiler
We don't want to
alert.
get too much into it because Keith hasn't seen Torchwood, and it's another thing that we'll tackle on this program as well.
Yes.
As we work our way through Doctor Who, we'll also work Keith through some of the peripheral shows like Torchwood, perhaps even Sarah Jane Adventures.
At the very least, the
Go on, say
crossover
it.
episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Say it.
Canine.
There it is.
I have yet to. We'll be delving into that
Maybe we
adventure
can all suffer
as
through
a
that
unit
together.
because I have not even gone to that point yet myself. So.
The plot of Miracle Day.
Spoilers.
Spoiler alert if you don't want to know. Skip forward about,
How long is it going to take
A
you to read
minute.
that? A minute. All right.
and then
Let me time you.
maybe longer for any discussion that follows.
If you tune back in and he's still reading the plot, you need to keep skipping
Go for
forward
it.
if you
Yeah.
don't hear it.
One day, nobody dies. All across the world, nobody dies. And then the next day, and the next, and the next, people keep aging, they get hurt and sick, but they never die. The result, a population boom overnight. With all the extra people, resources are finite. It's said that in 4 months' time, the human race will cease to be viable. But this can't be a natural event. Someone's got to be behind it. It's a race against time as CIA agent Rex Matheson investigates a global conspiracy. The answers lie within an old secret British institute. As Rex keeps asking, what is Torchwood, he's drawn into a world of adventure and a threat to change what it means to be human forever.
I was about to say, what old English institute could that be? Torchwood? I don't know about you guys. I think it's an intriguing idea. It seems to me, and we talked about this a little bit sooner before the show in our discussions, that it seems to me that they're taking more of an approach of Children of Earth, where Children of Earth, as opposed to the first 2 seasons of Torchwood, which were episodic and kind of standalone episodes. We had a continuing story arc that went through, but it was just more of their interaction day to day. Each episode could stand alone. Children of Need comes along, and it's an epic event. It's a 1-week miniseries, and they say, okay, this is season 3, it's got a title, and it was phenomenal. It was incredible. I think Starz is probably taking this same approach, and BBC Worldwide, are taking more of the approach that they did with the miniseries. They're going to, pull it out to 10 episodes and run it week to week, episodically that way, but I think we're going to deal with one story arc throughout.
I totally agree. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, Children of Earth was one of the highlights of the recent television memory. It was just phenomenally well done, whether you were a Torchwood fan or not. It was just an exceedingly well-told story. And, I enjoyed the show. Torchwood's kind of an interesting animal. It's very X-Files-ish in the nature. You get kind of a couple of mythology arc stories and then a bunch of standalone Monster of the Week kind of things. And as with most shows, the first 2 seasons, there were some real clunkers, and some of them were really, really good. Children of Earth, there's not one moment that is not totally worthwhile viewing.
Captivating.
And I'm very, very excited. Although, as we discussed earlier, I missed the title. I really liked New World. I thought that was a clever play on a couple different things. But I'm not gonna not watch it because it's called Miracle Day now. And I'm very curious to know what Captain Jack has to do with all of this.
Which in Miracle Day really almost has more to do with what the plot's going to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, not having watched any Torchwood, the plot has almost a flash-forward feel to it. And while the series Flash Forward was okay, it had its really great moments, but it struggled a lot. Just, they were trying to develop characters, but you didn't really care about them, and the plot didn't move forward quick enough. I'm sure this won't have an issue with the plot moving forward, or having enough plot to move forward with, but it just rings a little bit of flash forward to me for some
Well, I think
reason.
the nice thing with this is setting up right at the bat 10 episodes and knowing that that's the length of time. Personally, I think that was what suffered with Flash Forward, was that they were kind of striving for a TV series, and as good as the story is, I don't think you can sustain it over that. If they had done a one-year miniseries and done 24, 26 episodes with it, I think they would have been fine.
I would agree.
But not knowing how much of the mystery to reveal versus how much do we keep
stretch it
silent
out.
just in case we get picked up for another year, you're shooting yourself in the foot at that point.
Well, and I think not to mention taking a plot centered around Miracle Day and going a full year with it, you develop 10 episodes of one idea. And then where do you go for Series 5? You pick another topic and you pull that out for a year. And you're right. You've got a start and a finish. You've got a point A, a point B. You've got to get there in that much time. You start fresh the final year. And I think that that's the approach that this takes. And I think Children of Earth set that precedent.
Yes.
And that's the format I think they can follow from here on out. All right, well, moving along, we've got another piece of news that came out this week. This actually came out on January 4th.
Real briefly, January 4th, BBC Worldwide launched Classic Doctor Who channel on YouTube. The new channel features a mix of classic clips and exclusive previews from forthcoming Doctor Who DVD releases. The channel was developed to complement the Twitter account at ClassicDW, which is run by 2 Entertain. Classic Doctor Who launched with over 45 clips dating from the first episode, along with new Megalos clips, and an exclusive clip previewing the new Megalos DVD box set, which will be released by 2 Entertain on the 10th of January in the UK. So once again, stateside fans are going to have to wait just a little bit longer
for that release, although we
something
can
comes
access the YouTube channel, which I thought was something interesting. A lot of times things are region locked, and fortunately the BBC website, the Doctor Who website are not, but a lot of times when they put clips or things that are related to Doctor Who on there, they are region locked, and we're not often able to see them in the UK unless we kind of circumvent it.
Is there anything, I don't know, it almost makes you feel bad when you're there and it comes up and you're on the Doctor Who website and it's view this clip, view this trailer, view this behind the scenes thing, and you click on it and it starts to load. It kind of lulls you into that. It's going to happen. And then you get that sweet little message, we're sorry, this is prohibited content in your area. And I feel like a subhuman. I feel like a monster that has crawled out of the sewer, and I'm not good enough to view something on the website. And it's not that they're mean about it. They're very polite, to the contrary. But
and you get that impression, and I know exactly what you mean. It's that feeling of, oh, no, why not? Of course,
I suck because I live here.
That all goes to their obviously the BBC's television license in the UK. The BBC, or anybody in the UK, to watch government television anyway, that's sanctioned by the government, BBC and its subsidiary channels, pay a license a year to basically watch TV, and that actually is a benefit in the sense that they don't have to suffer through commercials like we do in America, and have commercial breaks and ad times and things like that, because we have advertisers here that are paying for that. They're actually paying for that content, and I think that lends to the fact that a lot of this stuff can't be shown outside until it clears BBC Worldwide, because at that point, then BBC Worldwide is generating revenue from the countries outside of the UK. So it makes sense, but I'm with you when it comes up and you do the, oh, I thought it was going to play. It's so heartbreaking. But I checked out the YouTube channel a little bit today. I haven't delved into it as much, but I think it's interesting. I think they're really only showing clips. I think when it first launched, I thought, oh, great, you can go online, you can go back and see entire episodes of classic Doctor Who. It's a good way for a person to catch up. It really seems to be, and I could be wrong, and I may be proven wrong by the time we record our next episode, but I think it's just tastes of several different episodes. And in
order to get you to buy the DVDs.
Clearly, I mean, and that is the drive. That is to get you to go out and say, okay, this whets my appetite. I'm going to go out there and find more. And it's clever and it's classic. And I think it's a good vehicle to introduce people to classic Doctor Who. It's a good vehicle to introduce people to the various doctors, to the various companions. Somebody that's watching the new series may catch a reference because the new series has become a little more fan-oriented. It still holds its own with new viewers, don't get me wrong, but if there's a mention, now that's a vehicle for somebody to go back and say, okay, I'm going to do a little more information on this. And instead of just going and reading a text or a synopsis of something, now I can go back and see that doctor and his, idiosyncrasies and his things that he's different, makes him different, the character, and that may even pull me in further to actually delve into the classic series on DVD.
Very true. And speaking of classic series on DVD, you just picked up something, Sean. What'd you get?
I don't need any enticement from BBC to go out and buy a Doctor Who DVD.
Us diehard fans don't.
I had Barnes & Noble gift card money and went and picked up the Doctor Who The Beginning box set. So all the way back with William Hartnell, episodes 1, 2, and 3 on DVD.
Which you actually had on VHS many years ago.
Many years ago. Well, still have Unearthly Child on
That's
VHS,
right. That's right.
but don't have a VHS player anymore. So figured it was time to upgrade. And I'm actually looking forward to sitting down. I think the three of us sitting down and watching this would be a lot of fun.
I think so too. I'm really intrigued to watch, especially the very beginning. I mean, I'm jumping in the middle, and watching this won't taint or color anything I watch from this new series. So
if anything, you may appreciate the new series.
Yeah,
Well,
very
and
true.
I think that does.
It's like going and watching original Star Trek and then going and watching Next Gen. It's like, oh, wow, okay.
And it's quite a different, atmosphere. I think what I find interesting, or what I love about picking up the DVDs now, is the extra content on them. You can learn so much about the series that you didn't know. Aside from going online, now it's all right here, one package deal, and that's what I enjoy, because I've actually seen all 3 of those episodes recently, but only the episodes, and so, or stories, I should say, and so it'll be nice to be able to go back and look at some of the DVD, commentaries and some of the extras.
And To Entertain has really done a great job with providing that content. I have yet really to find a DVD that I've looked at and gone, why is this documentary on here?
Unless it's a Warner Brothers that's they were quite
really
limited, and I really hope we get some of the revisitations in the United States that they have gone back and added content to since their original release as well. So.
Well, speaking of DVDs, I, as we mentioned last week, am new to Doctor Who, so I, this week, have started Season 5, or the 5th series. I've watched the first 3 episodes, and I thought we could discuss those a little bit. Let's start with the first one, The 11th Hour, which, in case it's been a while since you guys have watched it, here's the plot synopsis from the box set. The new regenerated Doctor has 20 minutes to save the world, and only Amy Pond can help. I was really impressed by the first episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I liked seeing kind of the Matt Smith introduction, even though I understand he regenerated as Matt Smith last season, or the last special, but you still saw the after effects, and it was kind of fun to watch that, especially when he's trying to figure out what he likes to eat and doesn't like it, so he throws it on the floor and runs around. And
Fishfingers and custard.
Yes, Fishfingers and custard. And I noticed something in that, not so much that episode, but the one after, but looking back at it, I see it now, that at least the first 3 I've seen really sets up a moral dilemma for the Doctor to deal with. And I also, this is jumping completely different topic now, this is my mind's thinking about everything that happened in the episode. I also found it really interesting that he said, I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then it was 12 years later.
Yeah.
And then he'll be like, he takes off again and comes back 2 years later, and that he didn't really have control of the TARDIS. And he mentioned the fact that it was rebuilding itself and that it was new, and he was still working out the idiosyncrasies. And they even reference that in Victory of the Daleks, that it took him 2 months to get to go see Winston Churchill. But that's almost weird to me, because watching the Christmas episode, he had such control over it, and the fact that he could pop in every single year for the next 8 years and jump around where he needed to be. Is that a common thing, where sometimes he doesn't have control, sometimes he does?
I think it is, and I think it's always been. The first thing you've got to learn about the Doctor is the Doctor lies. The Doctor says things that suit the situation that he's in quite often. I think another thing that you can attribute to the beginning of Matt Smith's era is, first of all, anytime there's been a regeneration of the Doctor isn't quite zeroed in. He's a little off balance, he's a little off key. I think he writes himself quicker sometimes than others, but I think even the not coming back for 12 years, I think was more of a The Doctor he's still got that cloudiness in his mind after the regeneration. And I think it was developed very well. I thought that was incredible how we see her as a child, and she's heartbroken that the Raggedy Doctor does not come back. And I think at some point she thinks, was this an illusion? Was this a memory? Was it something that I made up?
Yeah.
So that when he does reappear, and we find out more about Amy and find out that this is actually Amelia Pond. She now goes by Amy. I really thought that was a neat little turn, and I'm going to skip ahead because when you talked about then he doesn't come back for 2 more years, that was a nice backdoor way because even the viewer, now when he comes back and Amy's older, and it's been 12 years, it's obvious to the viewer, wait a minute, you've missed it. But they do the backdoor thing when he comes back in 2 years because you think, as a viewer even watching it, you're watching, in the same perspective of the Doctor, is that he just came back.
Yeah.
When she reveals to you that it's been 2 years, then you think, aha, oh no, it's still the same old Matt Smith Doctor that we've come to love in this hour-long episode.
Which, and I don't know how old she was supposed to be when we met her. What, maybe 6?
7. I think they mentioned it in the episode, but I can't recall. But yeah, I would say she's probably 6.
It almost seemed necessary
maybe
that they added the extra 2 years, so it's not like she's underage and illegal running off with the Doctor.
Right.
The way I kind of saw it was like, oh, that could have been taken very badly if she runs off with the Doctor. And
even
she's
if
only
she
like
was
16.
6 and there was 12 years, yeah, that's 16. We're probably off base here. She was probably about 9 or 10. I think she's probably about 22, 23 when he does make a return.
She is about to get married.
Well, and that's the thing is you think it's an about to be married thing, but she makes a comment of, this is my friend Rory. Rory says fiancé.
He says boyfriend.
Oh, she does say boyfriend. That's right.
We don't know about the wedding until the very last
and
shot.
that's what I'm saying is because of that 2-year arc, what happened of him being gone, what happens is that relationship's able to develop again, and you're right, in that time they get engaged, and as we find out later, it's the night before her wedding. Well, we find out at the end of that episode because...
Well, we see the dress. We don't know it's the night before her wedding until the next
episode. It's sort of implied until they verify it. Yeah.
I just assumed that she had already had her wedding dress and had it in her closet for a while. I mean...
I think it's true, too, and you're, again, probably more familiar even than I am, but with the classic series and going back to the older Doctors... There was a lot of missed trips in the TARDIS. Mm-hmm. And you really kind of got the impression that 99% of the time he didn't know how to fly it. He didn't know where he was going to land. He didn't know what was going to be there when he opened the door. Unless the plot called for it. In which case, then he got very, very good at targeting the year and the location. And we've seen that all the way up through, even David Tennant with, or not David Tennant, Eccleston, when he brings Rose back, and it's
been a year.
It's not 12 hours, it's been 12 months.
Right, exactly.
So it just depends on the episode that you're watching and, how good a pilot do we need him to be for this particular bit. And the TARDIS is an entity. It is alive. It's mentally linked to the Doctor. And so a lot of that, too, may be his scatterbrained, especially after regeneration. A lot of that may be the TARDIS is trying to sort through all of that information and occasionally locks into something that's like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that, and then it gets to where it needs to be. But I
think I've always supposed that they take kind of the quantum leap theory, that it's not necessarily always the Doctor that determines where he goes. It's the TARDIS that's determined where he goes that he's needed. Because obviously the show's built around the fact that he pops up somewhere, something goes wrong, the Doctor has to fix it. Well, that seems to happen way too frequently, way too coincidentally.
You mean like every episode?
I've always, exactly. So I've always sort of supposed that the Doctor's supposed to be there, and in some way, maybe the TARDIS or something is putting him in a situation where he needs to be. And sometimes I agree. I think 98% of the time he's not been in control, especially in the classic series. But also, he's a wanderer. He's running from his race. It's always alluded to the fact that he's running from Gallifrey. And so I think a lot of times it's also a pop-up wherever I need be, or wherever I want type thing. And that kind of goes along with that. But I also think the cloudiness of the Doctor maybe even played into that a little bit as well.
When they had, what was it, the Key to Time season with Tom Baker, that they actually installed a randomizer circuit so that the Black Guardian couldn't track them.
I think that's right. Yeah,
popped
the
up.
White Guardian was the one that sent him on the mission
Right.
to collect the keys, and I think I do recall that. I should recall that better because I just watched the time series. But that's a 6-story arc that you you have to go through and do all these different stories. But that's for another day. But yeah, no, I think that you're certainly onto something there, and that's probably true. I've always kind of supposed that as well.
Now you got kind of the benefit of having seen Matt Smith in the Christmas episode. So
Yeah.
you kind of had a little bit of an inkling as to what you were in store for starting this series. What were your thoughts of his doctor? What did you think of how he portrayed him? And
I still like him. I still see the energy that he had in the Christmas episode. It wasn't until like the next one that I see him kind of become serious. I did like how he ended up in the outfit that he stays in, and I can't stand these ratty clothes or whatever he says, and steals clothes and puts them on when they're running through some building.
I'm going to segue here. Can you name the 3 doctors that have stolen their outfits from a hospital? You know one of them now.
Matt Smith, Paul McGann.
John Pertwee.
John Pertwee? Really?
Actually, yeah, it's an infirmary, I believe, is what it is, because when he is regenerated, UNIT picks him up, takes him to feel better. He's in a hospital bed, actually. Gets up, goes in, takes the shower in the, I believe it's the hospital staff room, finds clothing in there, puts it on, and takes it off. So his first outfit, now, of course, we know Pertwee went through many different changes throughout
he
his
did.
series, but I thought that was interesting that we've now had 3 doctors that have picked their outfits at a hospital and clearly never taken them back. So
Necessity is the mother of invention.
that's absolutely right.
But I enjoyed watching him through the process of kind of getting back on his feet and discovering who he is in a way. As far as the plots, I thought it was a fairly straightforward plot. There wasn't any big twists or turns, but I did like the touch at the end where he calls back the eyeball and it flashes and shows you all the doctors that had come before. I thought that was a really neat touch to kind of say, okay, yes, we understand this is a new person, but he is the doctor you've grown him to love.
I think some of my favorites of the episode is and this set up an entire season, was the Prisoner Zero idea, which in context of the episode, we know who Prisoner Zero is. It's this guy that's been escaped. He essentially escapes through the crack in Amy's wall, and is able to mimic those around him in order to go into hiding and whatnot. Something that the actual Prisoner Zero is alluded to more times as you'll go along, so keep an eye on that. But also the crack in Amy's wall, it sets up a nice little thing there, and they leave it as a mystery.
I was wondering
that.
about that because I noticed at the end of Victory of the Daleks, there was a crack on the wall, or it looked like a crack on the wall when the TARDIS left at the final shot. I was wondering, I saw that and I was like, I don't remember if that was in the previous episode too.
Actually,
but
in Beast Below, as they pull back and they show the city wide, and we see the actual space whale that's carrying the city on its back. I believe it's that shot. It's been weeks since I've seen this, but in space, you actually see a little bit of a line with kind of a glow coming out of it as well.
Okay, good. So I'm picking that up like I should be. Okay.
I just want to say how impressed I was. Regeneration episodes are always a little iffy. You've got a doctor that you've come to know and love and depend on, and he's there every week, and you get to watch him and have these grand adventures, and then they leave. And it's something that you just get used to as a fan of the show. It's it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And I think especially with Tennant, everybody, I think, really, really, really liked Tennant as far as his charisma that he brought to it. And it was hard to see him go. For the first time, for me, I kind of fell in with Matt Smith right away. I didn't. Normally it takes an adjustment period. Even David Tennant, when he came on, it took a couple of episodes for me to kind of warm up to him after losing Eccleston. Matt Smith, just pretty much right out of the box, I was there. And part of that, I think, has to do with Stephen Moffat's writing. The fact that they worked in the gag about the pool in the TARDIS, going back to an old Tom Baker episode that they revealed that. But just everything with how it was put together and his portrayal of it, I bought into it right away.
The pool's in the library. No, so well, let's move on to The Beast Below.
The Beast
we talked
Below.
a little bit of
The plot of that one is the Doctor takes Amy to the distant future where she finds all of Britain in a giant spaceship. I was actually really surprised by this episode. I thought it was going someplace completely different, and it caught me off guard that it went the direction that it went. That no, it wasn't this evil monster underneath the bowels of the ship that's going to eat everybody. Instead, the evil monster was the humans that were torturing this space whale. I found that really interesting, and I liked the character dynamics even more between Amy and the Doctor, and just the development more of her character, because the first episode really develops the Doctor. Not as develops Amy some, but I felt I really got to know her in this second episode, and not so much the Doctor until the end, where he has to make this moral decision of, well, do I kill all these people or do I paralyze a whale? What do I make a whale brain dead or whatever? Mm-hmm. So what do I do? So I really enjoyed it in the fact that it took the twist that I thought I knew where it was going, and that's not it at all.
Well, it's neat that it makes Amy the hero in this one. It makes Amy the decision maker. It takes the onus off the Doctor. The Doctor always has a solution. The Doctor always fixes things, and the Doctor was prepared to do so. But he has that moral dilemma, and he's got to make a choice. And this is the first time that I can think of that the companion says, "Wait, there's another alternative." And I liked that. I thought that was a neat twist. I thought that was a nice angle to take with the Doctor Who story, because you don't often get that. It's the Doctor that saves the day. The companions are there to further the story and ask the questions of why the Doctor's doing what he's doing, and the Doctor's doing what he's doing because he has a purpose. And they didn't take that away from the Doctor in that episode, because the Doctor did have a plan, a conclusion, something that he could have done, and he was given a choice, and I liked that a lot.
What do you think of it, John?
I liked it too. I agree with you. As soon as I saw the title, The Beast Below, being a Doctor Who fan, you immediately go into, I think I know where this is going. And then you get the setup and the elevator shafts and the rotating heads on in the mannequin dolls and whatnot. And you're right, it was a completely different angle to go with. I liked the almost steampunk idea of this whole, all of Great Britain on a spaceship. That I thought was really
and
cool.
Ireland, but not Scotland.
And I agree with you. I thought Amy really kind of came into her own, which is tough to do when performing the episode in your pajamas and bathrobe.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
absolutely.
There's an added level of, they say the clothes make the man, or in this case the woman, and being able to do that while, because you're just out of place and ridiculous. And
Yeah.
I mean, really? I mean, I've got my bunny slippers on. I got to go do this stuff.
Which she even mentions, well, I'm in my bathrobe.
Yeah. But no, I thought it was a very well done episode, and I like you. It surprised me with I wasn't. I think a lot of times there's a prejudice that you kind of get this preconceived notion going into an episode that I'm not going to like this one, or I'm going to really like this one just based on the teaser and the title. A lot of times you fall into that, and I didn't get that from this one at all. So it was very pleasant experience.
I think some of the places it falls through is it seems like they set up this totalitarian government and made it this kind of evil entity. And it was this shadow that you didn't really quite understand, but you were afraid of and thought it was going to be worse than it was. And it doesn't pan out that way so much. And I thought that was kind of lost. I mean, it's set up there for the fact that they go in and they make these decisions when they go in and vote, quote unquote. And it's set up to be the vehicle for that. But they also introduced Liz 10, which was an interesting concept that I thought perhaps they would further along and never really revisited. But the Liz 10, it sort of seemed out of place in there as well. She's looking for this doctor that's coming along. They're looking for these signs, and it almost just felt like it fell through at the end when we decide that there's a reason why all of this is happening, and because of the space whale that essentially saved Great Britain, well, part of Great Britain, at one point in history. And I felt like they didn't satisfy some of those plot lines that they were developing there. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Thought it was a good story.
Do you think that's something that's, I mean, obviously, there's always the potential for characters to repeat themselves and come back on the show. Do you
River
think
Song.
River Song being an example. Do you think that Liz 10 is the potential for that type of character that she may show back up down the road, and maybe we'll get those elements of plot?
Considering she's lived 200 years, very possible.
Well, and in a roundabout way, she does show up again without spoiling anything for Keith in the season. We get
I tried really hard to dance around that once I started.
I'm going to say we get to see Liz 10 again, but I don't know if that was the purpose of it. If it was, I'm of two minds of that, because if it was the purpose of that, then yay, all power to them. But almost since they hadn't revisited it since, is it something that you introduce in the second part of a season, or the second episode of a season, and then hold on to for a season or two more down the road? I mean, it's really tough for me to swallow that. And I don't know if that was maybe the intent. We'll see.
I'd like to point into an example for that. Locke's wheelchair.
Well,
how long did it take just to learn how he ended up in the wheelchair?
Yeah, I suppose that's true, but then you're taking a vehicle.
3.5 seasons.
Yeah, well, then you're taking a vehicle that's still centered around a character, whereas Liz 10 wasn't as attached to our main characters that we're going to follow through the rest of the season.
That's true.
So, Locke's still as we divulge into Lost here, Locke is still a vehicle that's moving through, and we know that that's still attached to him. But I don't think Liz 10 had any sort of attachment to our main characters. That really...
Okay, so that's not a very good analogy.
There's also, and this is something that eventually Keith will get into with the the season 2 Tooth and Claw episode. That was Queen Elizabeth, right? I'm thinking right.
No,
or Victoria.
Oh gosh. Boy, it's been a while since I've seen that.
Got all of the people out there screaming at us right
now.
Well, yeah.
Talking
about this up.
Send feedback.
At any rate, I thought it was a very clever take that the Doctor basically becomes an enemy of the state for something that happens long in the past, and yet here we are, all these years later, that he works with UNIT, he works with Torchwood, he works with all these people, and they kind of regard him as that mythical hero where maybe they've given up chasing him or something because they know that they need him. And then you get to Liz 10, where she's like, "Oh yeah, we've been searching for you. We knew that you were coming, and that you would help us out of this."
Well, I mean, you can allude to the Christmas special the year they did Voyage of the Dam, where they're plummeting into Buckingham Palace, and the Queen, he's got a direct line to the Queen, to warn her that get her out of the palace, and of course she doesn't leave. But we're actually spoiling some stuff for Keith here. But in that sense, she, thank you, Doctor. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, you're an outlaw, but we're still going to use you, and
it's like Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the vigilante attitude that if it's working for, against crime, maybe we let vigilantism, flourish in one man. So, well, let's move on.
Back to the episode.
Go ahead.
And while Amy did kind of steal the show this episode, I thought Matt Smith's acting was phenomenal when he had that tonal shift of, oh, great, now I've got to do this. I actually felt that with him, which, for an actor to pull that off is phenomenal.
Well, I think his range of emotion in that episode itself, it's like you said, the Doctor finally takes a more serious tone. We get a side of the Doctor in the first one that's just really kind of whimsical and comical, and we're just learning about the guy. And in the second episode, we see the very stoic, thinking about things Doctor and figuring it out and understanding, and then the impassioned choice at the end. And it just really, Matt Smith, I think, really kind of exercised that whole range there.
He really did. And a lot of that continued on into the next episode.
Absolutely. I think so, too. Let's move on to the next episode.
Which was Victory of the Daleks,
Daleks.
That's
our American Daleks.
Daleks.
I swear to God, I thought there was an R. It's a Darlak. That's how and I have to stop myself because as a kid it was Darlak, and it came as quite a revelation to me to see it spelled out for the first time and go, really?
At least they're not derelicts.
Yeah.
The plot of this one is the Doctor is summoned to Blitz-torn London by Winston Churchill, and the Daleks are waiting for him. I enjoyed this episode. I'd like the setup at the end of the previous episode of Winston Churchill calling and that whole conversation with Amy of which prime minister. And that whole thing was quite entertaining. And then, having not watched the previous Dalek episodes, I don't have the issues with it that some fans who've been following the series do with it. I thought it was a clever way to reboot the Daleks. Like they mentioned in the episode, they were almost extinct. And then the fact that they got away, which means that the Doctor's one of the Doctor's major enemies,
Probably the major enemy, I would
isn't gone. They're still around. And the fact that these are now, quote-unquote, pure-blood Daleks, I think is really interesting, considering the fact that they were against anybody who wasn't Dalek, but they weren't pure Dalek, which is kind of hypocritical. Which, of course, they're machines, so they don't think that, but...
I think I'm... This
And
I
was okay with the new design, too.
I've made no secret of the fact that this is probably one of my least favorite episodes, and not because it's not well put together. I like the concept. I like the idea of the fact that we've got Daleks, that he's called back. Churchill now has this machine that's going to win the war for him. He shows them to the Doctor. Doctor realizes what they are and says, there's something wrong here. This isn't right. You're not the puppeteer. You're the puppets. The Daleks are being the puppeteers. And he recognizes that right away. And I think they do a nice job in that story of making you think, maybe something has gone wrong here. Maybe they are servants to them. And they do a real good job of doing that. I think always in the back of your mind, no, the Daleks are evil. Yeah. They're the bad guys. They're not, they are the puppeteers. But they do a good job of getting on the verge of convincing you of that. When that turns, I think it's a clever point. I think it was a clever way for them to lure the Doctor in to get the DNA or whatever they needed in order to produce
the statement.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He had to qualify that they were, in fact, who they were, so that they could then advance the race. That's right. I forgot about that. But I think I thought it was a clever testimony. There you go. I thought it was a clever device, and I even liked down to the fact that the professor that was in charge, the scientist obviously created them or thought he had created them. In turn, they had really created him, and that he was this android. And I like that premise. Where it goes south is when the Doctor goes off to the ship in order to confront them and fix this situation. And as they get the testimony and the machine starts up and the doors open and these Daleks come out, and my first impression was, okay, this is kind of cool, because this reminded me of the Daleks in Invasion Earth, the movie with
Peter Cushing.
What's the year? 2056, whatever it is, the Invasion Earth, Daleks Invade Earth. The Peter Cushing movie that was a spin-off of a Hartnell episode or story arc that was written by Terry Nation,
which I have on VHS if you guys ever want to watch it.
But because I liked the idea of the different look of, or the different color of Daleks, in order to kind of differentiate them as far as their purpose. But as they come out, my first thought was that iPod commercial where they show you the original iPod that's white, and then they start flipping it around to different colors, and every time they move it, it's a different color. And just the Dalek, it didn't set well with me at the front. I've heard people say the Skittle Daleks because they're really bright colors and stuff.
They are.
All right.
But you would assume that after a while they would no longer be really bright because wear and tear.
Well, I'm suppose that's probably where they could go with that.
Brand new.
But now here's the other thing that I have, because all the Daleks at one point, I mean, they've all changed. They've had colors for ranks and different designs and things like that. But it's always been kind of a muted thing. I mean, it's dull colors, it's earth tones, it's things like that. The Daleks have obviously evolved. We looked at a post that Sean got in a magazine just last week, and it's actually a Hartnell Dalek, and you look at that and it's just not quite right, because we're so used to middle of the era Daleks that are from the Genesis of the Daleks and Revelation of the Daleks, and I mean just those style. So there's even been a little bit of change, but this design was almost too much. I mean they've got hunchback. They're taller.
See, I didn't notice the
eye
hunchback.
ports, or whatever we call the things that flash on the top. Eye stalk. No, the eye stalk is... Well, the eye stalk is even different. When you look in the eye stalk, which I thought maybe was kind of a clever idea, it almost has an organic look in the end of the eye stalk. It looks like an eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe like that, but just, I don't know, the overall design, it just didn't set with me right away. And now, the other thing was, I've kind of getting tired, and I hate to say this because as a Doctor Who fan, the Daleks are almost as important as the Doctor in our universe because they've been around so long, they're so familiar. You always count on a Dalek story, every so many episodes in the day. They were spread out more so back in the day, but it seems like from Series 1, from the reboot in 2005, or the restart in 2005, on, they almost got overused to a point. This is just my opinion, but they almost got overused. And so I'm ready for a season that's Dalekless. So they got that one out of the way, and then they, escape, and they shoot them off, and they say, okay, now we've restarted the Daleks. We can do what we choose with them. And I like the concept of let's take and put them on a shelf now and get away from them, even though we get a revisit even in this season. But let's put them away, and we'll do something with them later. But now I almost am at the point where I want them to put them away for a season or two, and then bring them back and wow us with a Dalek story. Because I think the Dalek stories even got weak as we went along. Eccleston, I think, had one of the best Dalek stories. But as we got into Tennant's years, I think the idea of the Daleks got watered down or diluted or spread out. And I know it was a new approach and new things, but so that was my only problem with that, was we went through the whole Dalek thing again. Now we're going to reboot them. Don't like the design, but let's put them away and let's see what we can do with them down the road.
I'm not a fan of this episode. At all. I agree with you. I think it's a nifty concept. I like, and again, it almost harkens back to that steampunk feel where you've got a piece of technology that exists in a time frame when it shouldn't. And seeing a green Dalek right off the bat was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Very military-looking thing with Churchill.
Which makes sense, because it's still in that muted colors.
Yeah, and it totally works. Maybe I'm cynical. Maybe it's the years and years and years of experience sitting beside the Doctor as he fought these things. I didn't buy it for an instant that, we're actually here to help. No, you're not. There's something else. I don't care what kind of spin you put on it. I'm never going to buy that angle until you actually do it. If they actually come out with an episode where the Daleks are there to be helpful, and I will be waiting for them to turn all the way up to the end of the episode, and if they don't, then I will be surprised. There is no greater evil-killing machine that has ever been invented than these things, and that is it. And so I almost feel, as a viewer, you're wasting my time if you're trying to give me the subterfuge that, well, maybe not. I don't buy it. It's not going to happen.
Well, and the fact that they pull that out for a lot of the episodes before we finally get the reveal that, there is a master plan there. But I would agree.
I do like the layering of the mad scientist for the fact that they're his creation versus he's the creation. Okay, that's kind of a cool play, but it really kind of fell back into the whole B movie role that we've got a mad scientist and his creation is of course going to get loose and wreak havoc. I felt it was a very subpar effort, which is unfortunate because is it Nicholas Briggs that played Churchill? Is that the actor's name?
No, gotcha. The only thing that I knew
I should stay away from actors' names.
The only thing, Nicholas Briggs, Nicholas Briggs is the voice of the Daleks in a lot of the new series.
That's why he was in there.
But he was actually, memory recall here, the guy that brings Ace Ventura to Africa in order to solve the bat guana problem. But that's who that was.
Again, feedback and correct us because I'm horrible with that. But I thought he did a fantastic job. I loved Churchill. I thought it was great. I loved his relationship with the Doctor and how literally larger than life, they portrayed him as being able to come up with this. And always trying to get the TARDIS key from him and stuff. I mean, it just had a lot of stuff that.
So was this the first time we actually were introduced to Churchill in the series?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought there was actually previous.
They really made it feel
imply
that
really
way.
well. Yeah.
But
when you get a good impression from that too, that they really are buddies, and I do like the fact that Churchill is buddy and friends with the Doctor, but you get the impression that he also wants to use him to get the TARDIS essentially is what he's looking for.
Yeah, and I don't think I'd ever want to see him And I don't want to see an evil Winston Churchill episode, but I really liked the interplay between the two of them. I thought it was really cool. But like I said, and I agree with you. I think for what they had set up in the initial Series 1 to Dalek, which I agree with you, is probably the greatest Dalek story, maybe with the exception of Genesis of the Daleks, ever written. It's just phenomenal. And then they come back at the end, and then when it's Doomsday, which is another really, really, really good one in my mind, season 2, and then they kind of start falling apart. Daleks in Manhattan, I thought, was a weak entry in the Dalek.
Yeah, that's probably
phase.
My least favorite Dalek story.
And then there's this one, and I don't mind the redesign. There are elements to it. I mean, making them 12 feet tall, well, okay, that's different. I'm not going to complain about it.
I think they're ominous enough, though. They're scary enough.
That's just
they
it.
They didn't need to make them be larger than life.
They don't need to. I mean, it's almost comical in a way because of the design of the Dalek. Just aesthetically, making them bigger is going to make it easier to hide from them because all you have to do is stand behind them.
Just stay behind
them.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to swivel the eye stalk around enough to see you. And the series has been replete with episodes and moments of the Doctor escaping the Daleks through something idiotic. Like stairs. That was until they figured out how to fly. That was a really big deal.
In Remembrance, that was the first time we see him
That
go
was the first.
upstairs.
Yeah, and
well, it's okay.
And the look on Sylvester McCoy's face.
The doctor says, "Well, that's okay. They don't do stairs," and of course they do. And the look on his face is priceless.
Now, granted, it was agonizing because it took him an hour to get up 13 stairs. But, so I mean, I liked some of the intuition stuff that they've given them and the improvements over the years. I didn't feel this was necessary. I really didn't. There's nothing that they did with this design that, I mean, I didn't hate it, because they were colored or because they were big or because I just didn't feel it was necessary. I thought, based on the episodes that have come before, this was kind of a nifty way of continuing that we're on the verge of extinction but not gone yet. But even with Dalek, with Eccleston, I never really got the sense that they were over and done with. They're just that kind of villain. There are always going to be more Daleks somewhere in the universe.
At that point, though, by bringing them back and introducing them to the new series, I never had a doubt in my mind that they were going to be reintroduced again and brought back. So, yeah.
But I think it was a cool concept that was very, very poorly executed, and I didn't care for it at all. I think it's the weakest episode of the season.
With the redesign, I know the original voice is iconic, but it's also annoying. The pitch of it just bothers me, and I don't. The deeper pitch of these new Daleks, I like a lot better than the higher pitch of the old ones. That's probably because I don't have the nostalgia for the higher pitch voice like everyone else does because I'm so new to this. There were a couple things I really didn't like about the episode. One was the whole how they defused the bomb. Clap your hands if you believe.
They tried to make a touching moment out of that because the scientist is, and I wish I could remember his name. She's playing on the memories that they're obviously false.
Yeah.
That he has, and I appreciate the idea of what they were trying to do with that in order to
I don't mind
make a touching moment.
I don't mind the touching moment part. It's the logic of it of, well, how does the fact that he believes he's human stop this bomb? It's still going to go off.
Yeah. Just
because I believe there's toast in my hand doesn't mean there's going to be toast in my hand. I mean, so that I had a real...
welcome to Doctor Who.
Real big problem with. And I can't remember the other one, but that was the major thing I had a problem with the episode.
I think I concur with that. I don't know if that was my major plot point, but I had some problem with that as well. I wasn't sure how they were going to resolve that. There was that hanging in the back of my mind. I was like, okay, this guy's essentially a ticking bomb that's about to go off, and how do we fix that? I thought maybe it was going to be a little more technical than they made it, but yeah.
I think it very easily, from a writer's standpoint, it could have been set up as we're going to kill this guy. He's a dead man. I mean, he's a ticking time bomb. He is a dead man, and then somebody maybe not, I don't know, but maybe the powers that be were like, oh, but we can't kill him because he's a victim, and you need to save him by the end of the episode. All right.
I gotta throw out the elephant in the room here because nobody's brought this up. What did you think of the Spitfires in space?
Oh, that was what that's what I.
So the elephant was there; he just couldn't see it.
Actually,
I liked it. I thought it was cool.
I meant to bring this up earlier, but that wasn't what I had the issue with. I actually did kind of enjoy it. I thought they were just going to literally send rockets up, and I kind of liked the idea that there are these old World War II planes in space fighting this spaceship. It, like a lot of the rest of the episode that you mentioned, it called back to that B horror sci-fi movie feel to it, and I love those movies, so I didn't have a problem with that.
You'll have to stretch my brain here because I'm having trouble remembering, but I mean that was something that those had to be retrofitted with right away, and the scientist is clearly the one that helps design that. Do you remember? Did they ever explain?
They referenced the plans early on in the episode.
Yeah, but did they ever explain why Churchill didn't be the first one to send astronauts into space? I mean,
no,
clearly he was, but I mean, they could have taken those plans and really even furthered their way in the war. And I didn't remember the doctor ever addressing how that technology was then in turn taken away from Churchill, so it couldn't be abused within the timeline.
They didn't, other than the fact that the scientist gets to run away at the end, and you assume he takes all of his
knowledge and
all of his plans with him.
Okay. When I saw that I actually saw those in the trailer when I think it was at the end of Time Part 2. They showed the Coming Soon trailer, much like we saw at the end of Christmas Carol. We got to see the trailer for the upcoming season, and I remember seeing that, and I remember being excited about all of that, but just in the back of my mind thinking, wait, what is this? And so when we got to the episode, I thought, okay, they're going to explain that to satisfy me enough, and I just don't feel like that. I mean, I understand that between the doctor and the scientist, who's, I mean, clearly a genius, but he's designed to be that way. I mean, and the Daleks' knowledge in him also is what, is able to pull this off. But it almost seemed a little too grandeur. It almost seemed a little too Russell T Davies to me.
But I guess I also didn't have a big problem with it because so far in Doctor Who, I've seen a giant flying eyeball, a giant space whale, and fish and shark in the sky. So taking a World War II plane up in space isn't that far of a stretch. They at least had science to explain
That's true.
This has got an engine, and I can buy that flying.
We put a bubble around it.
We put a bubble around it. We're good. Okay.
I'm fine with that.
I give you that. That's one of the benefits of watching out of order now, I suppose. Is now you're buying into that, I guess. Okay, I'll give you that one then.
As George Lucas once said, some things you do out of whimsy. Dewbacks. They were put that out of the whimsy.
Well, overall, so far, what do you think? I mean, how is this progressing?
I'm really enjoying it. It took me a little bit to watch the first episode because I was distracted by other stuff. But after I did, I was like, I want to watch the next two. I really want to watch the next two. I think I watched the first one Tuesday. Today's Friday. And then... No, I think I watched it Wednesday.
I think you said Wednesday, yeah.
No, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday I watched.
Okay.
And today's Friday when we're recording. So I watched one episode a night. And if I didn't have other stuff to watch or wasn't playing a video game, I would watch more than one a night.
Do you feel is this something that obviously the desire is there? If we'd given you Doctor Who and said, "Dude, you need to watch this," you'd have watched it.
Oh yeah,
we can do that with you with just about anything.
Oh yeah, I totally would have watched it even without this podcast.
Do you feel hamstrung by the podcast? Do you feel like and we talked a little bit about it, and you and I talked. It was like, well, watch the first 3, and then there's a 2-parter. So stop before you get to that one, so that we can just talk about that.
Yeah, because the way I watch TV shows normally, I blaze through a season. I can watch an entire season, an entire U.S. season, in less than a week. Like, if I start on a Saturday, I'll be done by Tuesday.
26 episodes in 2 weeks, yeah.
No,
in a week. In like 1 week, yeah.
4 days, even.
Oh, my.
Like, some shows I've watched nonstop for 4 days because I enjoyed them so much. and I just can't stop because, oh look, there's more there for me to watch.
They're all right there in one disc. I don't have to wait week to week.
So I do feel a little hindered, but the conversations we're having about it makes me even more energized to watch more and makes me enjoy it even more.
There you have it, Glenn. There's two of us now that are upsetting our TV viewing for this podcast. I hope you appreciate the...
I've got other stuff to distract me, though.
Here.
If I didn't
Quite
have
all right.
other stuff, I would have a hard time keeping myself from watching more. Oh, there's nothing to say that I couldn't just blaze through the season and we just record when we record and talk about when we talk about. But...
Well, just look, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, because I think you're going to segue in the same thing.
I was curious to know where do you think we should go from here? The next episode for Matt Smith season is what's a two-parter?
Time of Angels.
And it's Time of Angels.
I remember the Flesh and Stone.
And I'm worried from the standpoint that I don't want to increase our grand experiment to the point where Keith's enjoyment of an episode suffers by not having the proper backstory to go along with it. And with this one in particular, I almost feel like he needs to watch Blink and the River Song two-parter in season 4.
I know you called me and expressed that concern, and I, for the longest time since we've thought about that, was I thought, well, we'll just leave it up to Keith. Keith just needs to decide how he wants to do it. We'll present to him the dilemma that's going to happen, and then he chooses what he wants to do. The more I thought about it, and the more that, especially when I go back and I see shots of River Song in the upcoming season, I think it's almost imperative that he very soon, and as much as River Song is in season 5, I think it's almost imperative that he goes back and watches Science in the Library and Forest of the Trees, which were the two that introduced us to River Song. Because there's two things we're dealing with here. You're going to be thrown into the Angels story arc, the Weeping Angels, and you're going to be thrown into River Song, both of which we've already been introduced to in previous seasons. I don't know that Blink is such an incredible episode, and it's probably my favorite of the new series. I don't know that Blink is all that necessary for the evolution of the Angels, because there are only Blink and these two,
That's
this
true.
two-parter. So he's really only a third of the way of not having understand this. So I don't know that Blink is so much necessary, although it's such a great episode. I'd go watch it tomorrow or tonight if I could. But I almost think that River Song is the more necessary here. So if it's a matter of time, which you obviously have plenty of time, you can pull through entire season
5 episodes
in 4 days. But
I think I can handle 5 episodes.
I almost think it's imperative that we at least get some foundation with River Song. And maybe if you've got... I mean, Blink's only a 45-minute episode. Maybe just even go back and do that as well.
Yeah,
But-
after I've talked to both of you about it, I've decided that I think I'm going to go back, watch Blink, watch the River Song two-parter, and then watch the next 2 for season 5. The
Flesh and Stone and Time of Angels.
Yeah.
Or I think I've got them flip-flop.
you haven't flip-flop, but yes, I won't watch them in that order, but I will watch those.
And the bonus of Blink is a Dr. Light episode. So even though you're going to get to see some Tenet, you've seen some Tenet before, just in off chance. But even though you're going to get a little bit of a dose of Tenet, it's Dr. Light enough that it's almost the story centers around the Angels and Sally Sparrow. So that's not going to take anything away from our experiment with throwing a Tenet episode at him. Going into the next 2 with River Song, we'll get a little more dose of Tenet and
Which I think will be an
Donna.
interesting element to add to my watching experiences. Okay, now I've gotten a little dose of Tenet, considering he was on for 3 seasons. I've gotten a little dose of Tenet, and now I'm back to Matt Smith, and I can kind of compare the two just from what I've seen of Tenet. And by that point...
It may give you more of a basis on watching Matt Smith.
Yeah, that's true. By that point, I'll have watched... After I finish the River Song duology from season 4, I like duology better. It sounds sophisticated.
Never.
I'll have watched 3 episodes of Tennant and Matt Smith, and then of course I'll add 2 to the Matt Smith pile. But I think that will add a nice element to it also.
Okay.
Maybe we should leave it up to the listeners.
Yeah,
We
if
could
you
throw a
have a
1-900 number
suggestion.
up and have people
Actually,
call in.
there's actually a poll on poll spot on Blogspot. So I'll throw a poll up tomorrow We'll find out what our listeners want, and we'll go from there.
There's
Yeah,
no
we can do
guarantee
that.
that we'll listen to you on that one. But
But yeah, if I'll wait 2 days after the episode is published, after this episode goes online, then depending on what kind of response we get, then I'll truly decide and
seems
sit
fair.
down and
Yeah.
start watching. So if you have a suggestion on this, Traveling the Vortex at blogspot.com.
so is the dot before the at?
Traveling
There's no
the
ad in
Vortex
it.
at gmail.com.
There you go.
That's what I think I was trying to say. Travelingthevortex.blogspot.com.
There you go.
Find us on Twitter and Facebook and let us know what you think. And check all the show notes for this episode, and you can find all the contact information there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Traveling the Vortex. You guys have anything else you wanted to add before we sign out of here?
Bow ties are cool.
And Fezes. And Stetsons.
Apparently.
Well, for Sean, Keith, and myself, cheers.
Good night, everyone.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.